Hello everyone, welcome back. Tonight I think I'm going to deviate a little bit from my usual C# WPF, and I keep saying that, so it's no longer my usual. But one of the things that I very much enjoy doing is automating myself out of work. Anything I can have the computer do is always better for me. So tonight I was going to take a look at creating GitHub actions, specifically being able to write them in C#, because I've got a lot of little helpers and utilities I've built over the years that, because C# is my bread and butter, that's where I build them. That's what I like to do. And I can always build them as like a .NET global tool and do the .NET global tool install, but I was wanting to play around with the making a custom action with them instead, as an, we'll say, an alternate means of being able to pass those things in. I think they're probably going to be a little hyper focused for my projects and what I'm using them for, but so we're going to go with that. But first, a couple other things. So last time I was asked about this video that was in here before. So the desktop community stand-up. So this is a video, and I will drop the link for it so that I can remember how to alt-tab appropriately. This is a video that was done as a community stand-up around WPF. Largely, so Olia, who I believe is I'm trying to remember her title, she's the PM for a lot of the desktop-y type environments. Hey, Justin Bieber. Yeah, so hopefully this is the answer to your question from last week. And then I don't remember, they had one of the other PMs from the WPF team on there kind of going through giving a state of WPF and updates of what they're doing going forward. Underwhelmed, I think, is the best way I could describe it. It was nice seeing them take questions and field information, but a lot of it was, we'll take this feedback and get back to you. And it wasn't exactly surprising to me. This is more or less, it was kind of what I expected to hear, and sort of the state of WPF. So the short version, people will often say WPF is dead. And usually that comment is based on the fact that, well, WPF isn't receiving lots of updates and feature work. Yeah, it's been feature complete for a while. With that said, it's very stable because of it. So it's been a great desktop building platform for years, still is a good desktop platform for years. It's brought forward with a lot of, when there's like OS or hardware changes that are needed, it gets that love. So yeah, it's not getting like a ton of new controls. And part of the reason why you won't see like a lot of new Windows 11 controls coming to WPF is the rendering stack. It's built on older DirectX, I believe, which is not as easy to port some of the cool things in. Like on trying to remember, I keep thinking material design, that's the wrong one. Fluent design. Microsoft's design paradigm, like one of the big things that they added in with that was the acrylic. That, let's see if I can find it. If I open, like, I think the calculator app shows it fairly well. Yeah, so like this calculator app, you can kind of see that it's got this, it's not transparent, but it kind of lets you see all the way through it. And it's weird that my mouse is making those artifacts on it. That's kind of funny. It's not really transparent, but that type of rendering isn't something that's possible with the WPF stack. It's just not there, and I would never expect it to be added. Is that important? Eh. So a couple of key things that I did hear from this video when they were going through and talking about it. There was a lot of comments about, hey, we've taken a lot of the key contributors from the WPF repo. We've given them triage access to like deal with incoming bugs and that kind of thing, which is great. I like to see that they're spreading the load, since I know that the WPF team at Microsoft is small. There's not a lot of people. There's not a lot of new work going into it. Not exactly shocking. A lot of the work that has come from Microsoft recently with WPF has been largely around the tooling space, making Visual Studio work better for it, updating the designer, that kind of thing, getting hot reload playing nice. So those types of changes that have come from WPF haven't necessarily been on the framework side as much as on the tooling side. But they did say that they added a bunch of community members, which is great. Some people took that as a good sign. Some people I saw took it as a bad sign of, oh, Microsoft's regulating this to a community supported project. It's going to die. It's like, no, they aren't there yet. And I don't think they would get there for many years. The idea that Microsoft has had a history of making projects community supported and then just dropping their support for it. And unfortunately, with a lot of community supported projects, sometimes they die. A lot of times they die because it's hard for somebody to maintain it when there's not, some sort of financial backer behind it. I get it. But I don't think that's the state WPF is in. Like I said, Microsoft still has several products built with it, so it's not like it's going to be a thing that they can kill off right away or anytime soon. Large swaths of Visual Studio are still leveraging WPF. So that would all have to change before I could see Microsoft reasonably dropping support. I've usually told people when they ask what framework to build on, look at the big names that are using it and for what, and you're probably pretty safe with that until the big names start dropping. And that's the point you should start thinking about migrating or panicking. So until I see Microsoft getting things like Visual Studio off of WPF, I'm not that panicked. It's not like, WPF is going away. Nah, I doubt it. At least not in the near future. It is a solid platform. WinForms, everybody likes to compare WPF to WinForms. Is like, look how much activity is in the WinForms repository compared to the WPF one. And what I think a lot of people forget is the WinForm community is multiple times bigger than the WPF community. Both in terms of adoption, number of apps written, number of developers in the field with experience. WinForms is huge. A big portion of that comes to the fact that WinForms was kind of one of the first to market when it came to having a kind of a reasonable dev experience, a nice WYSIWYG editor, and it went crazy. Like WinForms took off like crazy. Not to say it was perfect. There's a lot of things about WinForms that they feel very clunky, in my opinion, but it really is huge. So from my perspective, the difference in activity between the two repositories is a direct reflection on the size of the community and number of developers on each. It plays out that way. So I did hear a lot of feedback on the video as well, saying, hey, if there are things, specifically, there was a lot of time spent on the designer and kind of the recent updates that they've made. There's a lot of discussion of designer, hot reload, that kind of thing. My personal perspective, I don't care for the designer as much. I know there are some people that really like it. And especially some people want it. And I think what I heard in a lot of the feedback from people who want the designer is what they're looking for is more or less rapid or instantaneous feedback as they're typing their XAML to see what that looks like while they're building it. Even if it's not perfect, even if it's not exact, they want to get that rapid feedback. And hot reload doesn't quite get you there. It feels slow. It feels clunky. There's only so many changes you can make to it. And I think hot reload is a better solution ultimately, but I also realize that replacing the workflow that people want with the designer just isn't there. It is not up to that task yet. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. There was some good cases made in the chat on the video around different use cases for designer versus hot reload and when people wanted to use each. And so I can definitely see a case where they may invest a little bit more in the designer. They have done a lot recently. One of the things that they brought up is the quick action, so the little light bulb, or as I've always called it, the autocode button that most of us are used to in the C# side. They brought some of that into the XAML designer. Most of the time, my favorite thing for it is just doing it to get my XML namespace includes to pop in, which is great. It's a wonderful little thing. So, like I said, overall, I think a little underwhelmed. There wasn't anything in there that surprised me. There wasn't really anything that I would say threw a major monkey wrench into it. Like I said, I saw some people say, oh, this is clearly the time to start migrating off WPF. I'm like, I would not go nearly that far. If you're building a new app, I'd kind of evaluate what you're building. WinUI, specifically WinUI 3, is a pretty cool platform. I have started looking at adding support to the material design project for it, and I'm probably going to continue to look to add support for WinUI 3. But the more I play with it, it is not, how do I say this delicately? It doesn't feel as stable as WPF. WPF has years of experience providing like useful error messages for every possible mistake you could make. WinUI 3, I was playing with it over the weekend. I managed to get the XAML compiler for it to start throwing no reference exceptions. Now, admittedly, I was doing stuff well off the beaten path that I guarantee no one's tested, but it was one of those like, okay, this is starting to feel, when I have to debug the XAML compiler, it's starting to feel a little, not to say it's not done or not ready, but it doesn't feel quite as mature. And I think that's largely a reflection of its age. And the longer a software's been around, the more of those edge cases start getting hashed out and cleaned up. So at some point, I need to figure out exactly. I'm still not 100% convinced that the issues I ran into aren't self-inflicted problems versus bugs, but it does feel like one of those cases that I'd at least want a better error message. So at some point, I need to figure out, spend a little more time investigating and file some bugs. Okay. WPF community stand-up. Yeah. Okay, so let's go forward with some GitHub stuff. Okay, so one thing I don't know if people notice. I hope people notice. Something I've been doing on the material design project is on these releases, and again, I don't know if people actually even bother to read these things. But I have gone to the effort on GitHub. There is this lovely little thing where it will, if you create one of these magical files, one of these little release.yaml files. So when you create a new release in GitHub, there's a little button that says auto-generate release notes for me, which is awesome. Love that button. Very happy with that button. And you can tell it to go through, hey, by the way, exclude the following labels, exclude the following authors. Like this is just my automated hack icon actions bit. Let's see. So clarify, under the hood of Maui for Windows, will WinUI 3 work? Yeah. So, and actually just to be perfectly clear on that, under the hood for Maui, the Windows target is using WinUI 3. So there is not currently a WPF version for Maui for the Windows desktop. So if you use Windows, or if you produce a Windows executable as one of the multi-targets for Maui, you will be getting a WinUI 3 app. Good question. At some point, maybe I should spend some time building a Maui app. I don't know if that's interesting to people. The only drawback is it feels like there's a lot of people building Maui stuff. I tend to go different. I like to be different. I'm weird. But anyway, so this just goes through and builds out these lovely little release notes for me based upon different labels that I set. So if you see me merging PRs or issues or tagging them up that way, largely it's because I want to do this, which is great. Now, there's one thing that it doesn't do for me, or at least doesn't do the way that I want, is I would like it to gen a release of contributors, which is great. The problem is my definition of contributor and the auto-generated contributors is a little bit different. My opinion is people who spend the time to write up issues, and look at that, I got GitHub Actions bot in here, so I got to add another exclude. People who spend the time to write up issues and comment on issues and test bugs and provide feedback, I see that as a valuable contribution. And oftentimes, if all you do is comment on some issues, that doesn't count. That doesn't show up in the auto-generated contributors. So, what did I do? I did what every good programmer does. I wrote a little bit of code. So I've got a little CLI app that I've built. And this is just something that, here, I can drop the link to the repo if anybody's interested, but we're gonna mess with this guy a little bit. So I've got a little CLI app. Is using the system command line library for anybody interested. Boom, 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 which just had beta 4 drop today. So system command line beta 4. There's some cool stuff. Not a lot of cool stuff. It's a lot of improvements. But next beta is out. Anyway, so it uses this, in this case, the contributors command, and it goes through and it uses, what is it, OctoKit, to go through and get a list of contributors. So specifically, it looks up the given milestone, but then it'll iterate both through the issues and the pull requests, and it'll find all of the lists of contributors that are in there. Interesting that it still had GitHub Actions bot. And then it'll tack this stuff in for me. So you'll note a big thank you to everyone who contributed either with issues or pull requests. That should look remarkably similar to... Whoop. Ooh, interesting. Maybe I didn't run this. The CLI is it bat or only C#? So this is basically just a only in C#. But what I would like to do is I would like to look at making a GitHub action for it. So specifically, and I know I've touched on GitHub Actions a little bit in the past. Like the material design library already has several actions built into it. So for example, we can just pick on this icon one. So every night, this thing, you can see it's ticking off once a day. This action just fires up and it goes and checks for updates to the icons. It doesn't do a lot, but it just runs a .NET command, because it just runs .NET run against a project inside of this thing that generates some stuff out, which is fine. That works. However, you can create your own custom actions. So things like setup.net, run checkout, run icon generation, all of this stuff, that could theoretically get bundled. Well, not the checkout, that one we would want to keep. But in this case, like for example, generating the release notes, that could get bundled into one of these actions. So each of these little steps here is itself an action. And if we look back in the repo, underneath the GitHub folder, underneath actions, underneath workflows, I've got an icon update, and you get these little things here. So each of these little steps. And for example, actions checkout, if we look, if we go github.com, boom, and I just do actions checkout, that will actually take me to the repository, because all GitHub actions are just a well-formed repository. And specifically, I believe it's this actions.yaml that gives all of the description for it. And then you will note, I have this little, and that is tiny. Let me make that bigger. There's the little @2 on the end of this. That guy there then just correlates over to, if we look at the releases, or actually I suppose tags. Oh, no, I want to be in there. If I look at the tags, there is a @v2. So theoretically, I could update this to the v3 version, and it would pull that in, which is great. It's wonderful. But I wanted to look at seeing about containerizing up this little app, slapping it inside of a Docker container, and seeing about running it. So yeah, we're gonna run and see how this is going. So I've never done this before. I actually just took a GitHub Action certification test last week. I passed, but there was a handful of questions around this, and I kind of had to muddle my way through it, only kind of like I'd read about it, but I'd never actually done it. And there's a big difference between reading about something and doing something. So tonight we'll be taking theory and practical application. Okay, so once you complete this project, you should understand how to build your own Docker container action and test it in a workflow. Great. Self-hosted runners must use Linux operating system and have Docker installed to run Docker container actions. We aren't using self-hosted runners, don't care. So a runner is just the computer that's actually going to execute your GitHub action, which is great. Or your GitHub action workflow. It's probably the correct way, more correct-ish way to say it. Okay, so create a new repository on github.com. You can choose any repository name or use hello world Docker action like this example. We already have a repo and I've already got code in it. Great. Clone your repo to your computer. Done. From your terminal, change directories into your new thing. We are not going to do that. We are going to use Gitkraken because Gitkraken is awesome. Okay. Create a Docker file. So this is a bunch of Dockerization of it. Now, I think, if I remember correctly, we're going to try this. I think there's an easier way to add this Docker file. I believe it is right-click, add Docker or something or another. Docker support. Yeah, that. Linux sounds great. Done. That seemed easier. There's a lot of other stuff you could do, but oh wow, and it's even going to start. Yes, go ahead and start Docker Desktop. I usually shut Docker down because it is a memory pig, and when I'm doing other stuff, I like all my memory. So Docker Desktop will be starting itself up, and we'll see it go. Okay. So we're going to call that step done. Okay, so creating an action metadata file. Create an action.yaml, blah, blah, blah. So we need this file, and it needs to look something akin to that. Okay. But this needs to exist in the root of the repository. So we're going to go add a new item, and we will just do action.yaml. Boom. And then we're going to paste, and I just want to make sure, I'm pretty sure that'll go into the right directory, but I just want to confirm that. Just want to confirm that. Little itsy bitsy. Ooh, I got two Dockers open. That doesn't sound good to me. Sorry, it's squawking at me about something or another. Install a new version. What's the worst that could happen? Yeah, do it. Okay. In retrospect, downloading updates while in the middle of a stream is probably a horrendous idea. But I like to live dangerously. So, we are going, apparently latest version is 4.8.2. We're going for it. So, crossing fingers. If the stream dies all of a sudden randomly, you'll know what happened. Okay, so action.yaml is in the root of my repository. Great. Great. Okay, now, let's see. What did it say here? The metadata defines one who to greet, right? And one time output parameter. The time we greeted you. Okay, so I think we're going to end up doing a little bit different bits. So to pass inputs to the Docker container, you should declare the input using the inputs and pass the input in the args keyword. Everything you include in the args is passed to the container, but for better discoverability for users of your action, we recommend using inputs. I agree. That's part of why I want to do this, so that I can have nice, strongly typed, well-named, well-known inputs and outputs of this thing. GitHub will build an image from your Docker file and run commands in a new container using this image. Excellent. See, that's what I was looking for, is I wanted it to do the building. Wait, how many instances of Docker did I open? Okay. When it says update and restart, I really hate this. I'm assuming it's only going to restart Docker Desktop and not my computer. If the stream dies, I apologize. Please don't reboot my computer without asking me. I mean, you technically asked me. Okay, it's stinky. Oh, good. It looks like it's just going to... Okay. Okay, so it just shut down, and now it's running through its own installer bit. Okay, great. Okay, so the convenient part here is GitHub will build the image and run commands in a new container using this image. That's what we want. That is what we would like to have happen. Okay, so we are going to need to actually test to make sure that this works. But okay, so let's start with some obvious things, because I think I'm gonna preemptively change some of these things already. So in terms of my basic launch settings, there is effectively, to get the contributors out of this thing, there is only one parameter needed, the milestone, because this is what it's going to use to go out and get it. Now, that assumes I leave the GitHub owner and repo hard-coded. And I think we probably want to add parameters for both of those as well. And I'm glad it added a Docker endpoint. This is almost assuredly not what I want. Okay, but let's go to our action YAML and let's change some of this stuff. So we're gonna start with the first and easy one, milestone. Description. Let's see, the milestone to list all of the contributors. That's poor grammar, but let's see. Required. It will definitely be required, because without it, and there is no reasonable default that I can provide. Okay, and so next I'm going to want repository. And this is one of those areas where I think how about repository name that contains the milestone. I think there's a way to do a default where it can default to the repository that it's currently in, I think. Don't know that. We will find out. And then let's go here. Repository owner. The owner of the repository that contains the milestone. Okay. So all of those are going to be required, and I don't think there's a... Docker, stop interrupting. You will get your turn. Be patient. Okay, and then the output of this thing is going to be contributors. Get rid of that comment. And then and get contributors. Let's see, the list of contributors. That's fine. Okay, so args. So these are the args that are going to get passed in here. So I think what we want to do here is we want to do something like milestone, and I want to do inputs.milestone. And then I believe my program already supports, I know I'm passing those things on. So it's got some fallback accessy bits. It's also got an access token bit. Does it even use the access token? It does use the access token. What do you use the access token for here? Oh, interesting. We'll have to figure out how to get access to that. So there is, so in this case, I'm using just a personal access token to get at it. But GitHub Actions, the runner, there's a generated token that it can use. So we'll want to figure out how to get access to that lovely thing. Okay, so, but we do want to do repo owner and repo name. So repo owner, it's going to end up being inputs. Hey, Maverick. Germany. Ooh, that's a long ways away. How are things in Germany this fine morning? I'm guessing it's early morning for you, like 8 a.m. Guess. Let's see. Repository. And then we want repo. Sweet. Love when I guess correctly. So I was somewhat cheating. I had to do time zones for Europe earlier today, so it was more memory recall than actually knowing. Okay. I just did those backwards. Repo owner. Repo name. Okay, so we're going to give that a shot there. Okay, so I think that works. Because this is just going to use Docker to run the image and pass these args in. These are the inputs. This is the command line that I would expect to get passed to my program. Deflux, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome to the stream. I think that's all that it is. So Docker image, I'm pretty sure that's what we saw in the instructions, right? So everything you include in the args is passed to the container, but for better discoverability, we recommend using inputs. Yeah, great. Writing the action code. So this is like actually building this stuff. So they're just using an entry point sh and they're just writing a script because their Docker file here was legitimately just copying the shell script into entry point.shell script and then executing it. This is about as, I think, it might be the simplest possible sample that you could make, which I'm sure is what they were going for. We're going to do something a little more complex. And we can probably even strip down our Docker file a little bit too. I mean, this is probably all fine. Just trying to look at what it's doing. So it pulls down so Docker files have layers that can be added to them. So for example, it starts with the runtime, which is the minimum of what you need to run .NET stuff, which yay, huzzah. And I think this one, I can't remember if this one's based on Alpine. There's extra tags I know out on Docker Hub beyond just the 6.0. And there are specific ones for various, if you want to get really specific, like you need Bullseye or Alpine or whatever. There are, if you care, there are very specific ones. I don't remember what this one is. But then on top of the runtime, it's going to layer on top the SDK because it will need the SDK to be able to do things like .NET Restore, .NET Build, .NET Publish. But once it runs .NET Publish, we now have a published version of our app that can run. And then we go from base as final. So, base sets the working directory to /app. And then from publish, app publish. And then executes .NET GitHub helper DLL. It's just pretty cool. So this is a fairly common common Docker file that they set up, which is great. I've occasionally used this. I've seen some interesting disadvantages because there's pros and cons to building your app inside of a container versus not. On the positive side, building in the container, you get very consistent, reproducible builds that work the same on everybody's machine, regardless of how they set it up, which is cool. On the disadvantage, if you do extra stuff as part of this, like occasionally, sometimes if you go through to like run tests and you want to, pull stuff out, or what are the cases I've run into this? Like getting the test results, the TRX file or the code coverage results, then you have to deal with, well, I ran the tests, I got the code coverage, but the files that those tools generated are now inside my container. I got to get them out. It's like, is that worth it? Or should I just build and run outside the container and push and copy my stuff in after? I don't know if there's one right answer. Because I've seen people do it both ways. Like I said, pros and cons to each. And some people will look at that and go, of course, it's easier to just copy stuff out of the container. You should absolutely do that. Sure. Everything, whatever the person knows is always the easiest option. Okay, so entry point, blah, blah, blah. We're going to pretty much ignore this entire step because we've already got a thing executed. The one thing that is interesting to me, next, the script gets the current time and sets it as an output variable. The actions run later in job. In order for GitHub to recognize output variables, you must use a workflow command in a specific syntax. See, this is what I was worried about. So they're just doing an echo set output name, output name, value. Okay, I'm familiar with that. So I think what this means, because echo is just going to write to standard out, and then I believe what they're doing is watching standard out for this well-known format to just do it. So I think, for the purposes of our code, I think what that means is inside of my program, when we do milestone contributors, I just had a brilliant idea for system command line. Because system command line has the concept of like, what is the term we used for it? Like different output formatters. Because sometimes you might want your command line to basically do kind of like content negotiation. You want to basically get like that ASP.NET Core feeling where you return back an object, and then the caller says, well, I want that object back to me serialized as JSON, or I want that object back to me serialized as XML, or flat text, or whatever. It would be really cool to have one that was GitHub Action output. That sounds cool to me. Okay, but down here, I think what we want to do is not this per se. So I think what we're going to do is go with string builder. Just going to instantiate a new one of these guys. Oh, nope, not what I told you to do. Using system text. Okay, and then we are going to do, let's see, SB right line. SB, oh, it's not right line, it's append line. Boom. End line. And then what we will do is we will go with console.out.write line. And this is where we need our fancy formatty bits. That thingy. And I'm curious how it's going to handle new lines. No idea. Okay, so set output name. So our output was contributors. So I assume that's going to go there. And then value is just going to be toString. Boom. Oh, and I guess I don't need that. We're inside of string interpolation. It will implicitly toString it for me. Huzzah. Let's see here. So that builds that. That builds that. Okay. I think that is going to work. Let me just run this real quick and make sure it's going to work. So, just gonna quick test this, just real quick. The convenient part is this will work because I have environment variables for my token. And unlike my past streams, I'm not going to be stupid and expose my token on stream. Because then we get a quick exercise in how do you reset your access tokens. Not fun. Go. Hello? Did you even get to me? Try that again. Okay, that's good. Hits main, does all the stuff, does all the stuff, does all the stuff. Do an invoke, we get into here. Oh, maybe I was just impatient. I guess it is querying a lot of data. Because it is pulling back all the issues in the repository. Oh boy. I guess that is a little bit of data. I wonder if there's a faster way to do this. we will figure that out at a different point. We're going to let this thing run for just a moment longer before I get fed up with it and give up. Because this is running... Oh, there it goes. Okay, so it was running. I was just too impatient. Okay. So set output, name contributors, and then format that I expect with everybody in here. Great. Okay. That seems goodish. Let's see. Make your entry point, creating a README. Let people know how to use your action. You create a README file. I think this thing already has a README. Yep, it's not brilliant, but it's there. In your create a README that specifies the following information: detailed description, required inputs and outputs, secrets the action uses. Currently none, but it's going to need more. Environment variables the action uses. An example. We will come back to this. I don't think that is needed. Create and push. And so they are very intentionally tagging their action with a V1. The thing is I know that I don't have to tag. Rather than use it after the @ sign in the action, where is it? Rather than this being a tag, this could also be the commit hash. Now, you generally don't do that, just to be clear. When you're actually publishing it for other people to consume, you do not want to target an individual commit hash. However, for testing, that seems like a great idea to me. Now you're ready to test your action. Okay, so the problem I have is I could run this inside of a container, but I haven't. Okay, so we're gonna do a couple more things real quick, just because this is going to be problematic. This is all fine. This is all fine. We're gonna go right here. So console out right line. Oh, this is in created projects. Oops. Oopsie. I'm looking for milestone contributors. Let's see. Getting contributors from. Just gonna slap some stuff in here real quick. Boom. From, let's see, repo owner / repo name for milestone, and we'll just slap the milestone in there. That way there's output for this. Because I have a sinking suspicion if I don't do anything, it's not going to get the right access token. I'm going to need to do something. At minimum, change the environment variable name that it's looking for. I just don't know how to. I don't know what it needs to be currently. But I want to see this thing. I want to see this thing work. Okay, so Git Kraken, because everybody loves Git Kraken. Let's see here. Docker file. It added a Docker ignore for me. I do wonder if this Docker file needs to be at the root or not. How else would it know? Let's go to creating a Docker file. Let's look. I have a sinking suspicion this Docker file has to be at the root of the repository and not down a layer. Working dir entry point sh, yada yada yada. Doesn't really say. Docker file contains instructions. This is, yeah, that's Docker directions. That isn't. Actions metadata can ensure that you are familiar with how Docker file interacts. Any unexpected behavior. Yeah, so my thing is going to fail getting the token. Great. You configure your container to exact. Oh. So I could actually get. Oh, I get it. Oh, this is cool. Okay, so these things inside of these curly braces, these are just variable references to these inputs. However, within inside of new tab, sure. GitHub Action context. So this thing. So I will say this: the GitHub Actions doc, and actually a lot of the GitHub docs in general, they're pretty good. But some of these, so there are a variety of different contexts that you have available to you. And you can see the big long list over here. So there's matrix, needs, input, strategy, secrets, runner, steps, job, environment, GitHub, blah, blah, blah. Tons of stuff. Each of these contexts, the important thing to note is that not all contexts are available in all places inside your YAML. So this kind of highlights the different hierarchies in your YAML all the way through, and which contexts are available to you at each of those steps. Now, in our case, we are inside of our runs, and I assume that I'm going to have access to like the GitHub context. And I believe the GitHub context has access to a magical little token in here. So it does give me, yeah, so this might be a case where I could probably default this thing. I could probably default these things. Because you'll note repository owner, repository. And I actually don't, because repository actually contains the owner and the repository name. I kind of want them separate. I'm sure there's a different one in here that's just the repository name. But I'm more interested, yes, this guy, GitHub token. Yes. Within the execution steps of a job. Interesting. So I don't know if this thing is going to be available to me. I think it would be, because at the point this is run, I will be inside of a step. I think. We're going to get this working first, and then we're going to come back. But what I think we can do then is change up those defaults that I was wanting. I do also suspect that I'm going to need to change my Docker file a little bit. Specifically, I think the Docker file is going to need to move up. That's interesting that the Docker ignore magically got added there too. Let's see. I'm currently working on a WPF app using MVVM, Entity Framework 6, non-core, generic hosting, PostgreSQL, and material design for XAML. Wonderful choice. The combination of MVVM, Entity Framework 6, and Postgres is challenging, but the material design XAML toolkit is just awesome. I like your video streams. Thank you, Maverick. I appreciate it. I'm guessing you've probably found some of the ones that I did on the generic host and Entity Framework type integration stuff. But if you've got questions, feel free to let me know. I haven't done anything that is old EF6. But I don't, most of the EF stuff that I've done on my stream, I don't think is actually core specific. I think a lot of the principles actually apply to all of them. So, should work. But big asterisks next to that since I haven't actually tested any of it. Okay, so we're gonna open containing folder, and let's actually do a couple things real quick. So open terminal, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so first thing I want to do, Docker build. Let's just, let's just make sure that we can actually build the Docker image. We probably can. There's very little reason to assume that it won't work, but we're going to test it. And see, look at that. Failed to compute cache key, GitHub helper. Oh, see, I was wondering if I needed to be up a level. Interesting. So did that thing generate? I didn't notice it. It is generated. Oh, interesting. Okay, so the generated path appears to assume that the Docker file is up a level when it's not. Okay. Let's just pick it up and drop. And then it falls out of the project. Yeah, I assumed you'd be unhappy. Stop it. Not helping Visual Studio. Add existing item. Docker file. Boom. For people unfamiliar with some Visual Studio stuff, the solution items folder in your Solution Explorer is not a real folder. It's legitimately a dumping ground where you can link in other stuff, which oftentimes you'll link in things like your action.yaml, your Docker file. Oftentimes I'll even pull in something like my my README as anything that I might want easy access to in here. And that might not, and again, easy access that isn't necessarily underneath a project. So this is solution-y level, higher up level stuff. Okay, so now that we got that up a directory, we got you up a directory, just confirm. Let's make that a little bigger. Docker file exists, huzzah. Docker build sudo make me a container, or sudo make me an image. It's gonna be awesome if this thing just kind of works out of the gate, because I have a bunch of things that I would like to go through and fix my automation on. Okay, run .NET restore. So determining projects to restore. No package exists with this ID in sources NuGet.org. Oh. Well, that's a little bit of a disappointment there now, isn't it? Okay, why do I have NuGet.exe here? Was I using that for something? I assume I must have been. Oh, I know what I was using it for. Yeah, I was using that. So that command is definitely not going to work. Is the application built on your PC and then copied into a Docker container? So that is one way you can do it. So it depends. You can run all of these same .NET commands local on your computer. So you can do a .NET restore, a .NET build, a .NET publish. You can do all of that on your terminal just manually. And what you'll end up with is, and if you do these commands exactly, what you'll end up with is a published version of your app inside of this directory. This is on Windows, this would end up being resolved as a relative path. On Linux, this ends up being an absolute. And that's one way you can do it. If you compile your app outside of the container, you end up having to copy the contents into the container. So in order to get access to it, which is fine. That works. Because at the end of the day, you do end up having to do a copy somewhere to get stuff in. This one here is doing the compilation inside of the container, which again, this has the advantage of everybody who uses this to compile, because you've set a base image. So a base image you could think of as a lightweight abstraction over the operating system. The image has various tools installed at a path. If you were to open a terminal up inside of this, you could kind of CD around and it would look like a Linux environment with the .NET SDK installed, which is great. So this is actually doing the restore, build, and publish within the container. and then producing a final output, which is fine. But again, you could do the build and then copy the results of the build in if you wanted, or you could do it all inside the same container. And some people have strong opinions about which one is best. I do not, at least currently, have strong opinions. I tend to do my builds usually outside of the container, largely because there's a lot of cases where I want to run like extra tools against the build, or I want to get like code coverage result files. And for me, dealing with it inside the container and copying out just adds extra overhead. And it also means that it assumes everybody has Docker installed. And sometimes if you don't care and you just want people to open up your project and hit F5, having that extra overhead of you must also have Docker installed is kind of annoying. At least that's my opinion. Okay. So I understand that this thing is trying, so short version, the .NET restore command did execute. It did find the project because this is output from the .NET restore command here. So it did find the project. It's not like it's missing. But what it did say is it's looking for this NuGet package, but didn't end up finding it. And I'm not overly surprised. I have a suspicion I did something bad where I used an additional NuGet source that doesn't exist, which at the time I built this for at the beginning, things weren't necessarily on NuGet.org, and so I probably, yes. See here how it says .NET libraries. Whoopsie. The problem being that that's not something that exists inside my container. Let me look. Did I do that with an see? And the problem is I didn't do this right. So yeah. So I created this. The problem is I created this, and I don't see it with at my user level rather than down at the project level. And inside of the container, it doesn't know anything about that. And it rightfully smacks me upside the head and says, "What are you talking about?" So there's a couple ways to go about doing this. And I think the easiest is just to go grab my NuGet. So I'm going to just double check before I show it on screen. I'm just going to double check and make sure that it's not containing anything sensitive, because I'm going to be smart. Oh, guess it's going to try to open on that screen anyway. Let's not open on that screen. Let's just sit to the side here. What? Open file. Open file. Why are you being so obnoxious, VS Code? In the file. Interesting. Okay, perfect. So you can see, at least on my system, so for people who may not be familiar with this, you have a default NuGet config that exists underneath your app data directory. So if you just go into Visual Studio over here and hit the gear and start adding stuff, by default it's going to add it to that config, which means it gets added for all of your repositories everywhere. The problem is that's at your user level, not at your repository. And in this case, when you're doing a compilation for the repository in a container, inside that container, it's kind of effectively a new machine. So, oops, so we got to bring it down. Let's see. The problem is that unfortunately I still have to work with .NET Framework 4.6.1 at my work, and the switch to .NET Core, .NET 5 or higher will unfortunately take a few more months. Yep, I totally understand that. We still have too many workstations in our company that use software for .NET Framework 4.6.1 that still have to be converted. But thanks for your offer. I might come back to it when the time comes. Cool. Yeah, my company is actually, that's one of the things that we've been doing recently for several people, is getting their old repositories updated from .NET Framework to .NET Core. In a lot of cases, just jumping up to Net 5 or Net 6 isn't a big deal, but a lot of it comes down to what dependencies you're on. And there is enough differences between like EF Framework and EF Core that it's not just a flip to switch migration. It's a little bit more complicated. I would say the migration is like the first 80% is really easy, because there's a couple tools out there from Microsoft like TryConvert. I think there's a CLI tool that will do it'll get you like an 80% solution, but it's only an 80% solution. And then you're kind of stuck now. So okay, so the solution for me in this case is just going to be to bring this config, because this config here just contains these things. And I don't actually need all of these, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to close the folder. Why did I close the folder? Open path. Hold on. Nope, that's not the right one. Here we go. That one. Open path. Boom. I'm going to grab this config and I'm just going to bring it down into my local directory, and then we're going to go back to Visual Studio real quick and just clean it up. So we go here, we go solution items, we go add existing item, we bring in the NuGet config, and we don't care about these. And one of the things that you'll see a lot of people do when they bring in NuGet configs is they'll lead off with something like this. So this just clears any prior loaded package sources. So if there was something at a user directory or higher up, it says drop all that stuff. Here's the stuff you need. Okay. So now we'll Docker build that guy, and hopefully we get past. One other thing I will call out, you'll note that it doesn't re-download all of that stuff. It ends up just hitting the caches. So Docker ends up caching like the base images and whatnot. So the first time you run it, it'll take a minute. It has to download those base images. But then you are off and running. Okay, so determining projects to restore. Why? Oh, did it copy? Oh, it didn't copy the NuGet config because the NuGet config is an extra level up. Well, I'd prefer to leave the NuGet higher up, but for the purpose of making forward progress, we're just going to copy it down and call it a day. Oh, come on. No package exists within the source NuGet.org. Why are you convinced that that's the only source? You should have the NuGet config down here. I think I can do a -F to force it to rebuild. What is the force do it over command? Oh, no cache. That's what I'm looking for. No cache. Okay, for some reason it's not finding that. It's not finding the NuGet config. Let's try an alternate strategy. So let's just try manage NuGet packages. I think if I go to NuGet.org and I just search for command line, I think I can find it here. No, I can't. They're not all on just straight up on NuGet.org. Some of these only exist on the .NET libraries. That's disappointing. Disappointing. Okay, so why are you not finding my NuGet? Okay, working dir. Okay, let's go back to. I can't read that. Let's go back into our Docker. What did I mess up here? So working directory, copy. I'm kind of curious. Run. Is it grabbing everything? Let's just try this one more time. Huh? Okay, I am clearly messing up something. Oh, is it just as simple as the fact that the restore is... So what is this doing? This is copying GitHub helper, source destination. Oh, is that trying to restore with just the CS proj and nothing else? Hang on. That seems wrong. Let's give that a try. Well, it's certainly thinking a little longer. Hey, look at that, .NET build. Okay. That's interesting. I didn't realize that. So the default Docker file that they generate copies in only the CS proj and attempts a .NET restore on it. And I assume that's for speed, because the CS proj is small. Before copying in everything else. Feels awkward though. Feels awkward. Okay. Blah blah blah. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so we got an image. Image exists. Great. And I assume if I open up Docker desktop, let me just check what I've got in here. Let's see. I've got this guy here. I don't know if I'm going to see the output or if it's just going to run and terminate. Because I think you get, where do I see my, do I just jump in? Okay, so this shows me the execution. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, so that ran without passing any args to it. So I expect it to print help and terminate. Because that's not going to do a darn thing. Stop. Stop. Where do I... Yeah, exited. That's kind of what we expect. Let's see here. If I go... This guy here, if I do a... like a run with args, optional settings. Volumes, path, container name. Foo sounds great. Leave forever, sure. Yeah, this isn't quite what I want. So we're just going to terminate this and whack it. Because I think what we're ultimately looking to do is a Docker run command. And Remind me of my syntax, pretty please. Docker run image command args, right? So, because it's Docker image list. Getting my stuff confused. .NET runtime. I got a bunch of kubectl stuff. Thought there was a GitHub helper tag dev. So I should be able to do Docker run GitHub helper. Let's see. I think if I do milestone 45460, and then I think I want this to say contributors. Spelling's hard. Okay. Blah 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 blah. Let's see. GitHub helper. Yeah, was that the built? I will start container process. You will not found in path unknown. Oh, what is this? Run image command. See, and I don't remember how to do this, so we might just let them. You run the I don't know if this is going to do much if you just .NET on the DLL without passing the args. I don't think it automatically passes the args. Response from Daniel. Failed to create a shim task. OCI runtime. Create failed. Run C. Create failed. Unable to start container process. Executable file not found in path. Let's just turn this off for now and make sure that it'll run. Okay, so it's landing on the wrong we're gonna detour on a quick side excursion. Docker.NET CLI app. Containerize an app. .NET new console, great. That's exactly what we've got. .NET working, blah, 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 great. .NET run, yeah, we work on .NET run. We already tested that, great. .NET run, counter, blah, blah, blah. Publish .NET app, we did a publish. Great, create the Docker file, great. Great. I just realized, did that thing pull in a bigger image than what we needed? Nope, just .NET. Okay, that's fine. Docker build, tf Docker file. Docker will process each line in the Docker file, blah, blah, blah. It should have found the Docker file automatically for us. We didn't specify a tag, but a tag was created for us. Great. Docker images. Counter image, great. Latest is the tag. All of this. Enable diagnostic 0, great. Docker build. And when that command finishes, run Docker images. I don't want to create a container. I don't want to connect to a container. I just want single run, Docker run. That's what I want. There we are. So IT, which I believe is interactive or interactive terminal. think is what it stands for, and then RM to do two things. First, automatically use the current terminal to connect to the container, and then when the container finishes, remove it. So I think that's what we want. This guy. Docker run IT, and then RM. So I'm inside of my container. Okay. There's nothing inside of app. It doesn't instill me with a lot of confidence. It should be under app publish. Okay. Doesn't exactly make me feel warm and fuzzy. Okay. So, how do I get out? Docker will stop the process that is running in the container, which in turn stops the container. Yeah, the problem is that assumes that the container started. Die. Assume that should pop me out. Yeah, because then the running container is gone. Okay, clean that up, clean that up, clean that up. So I'm not convinced that my app is actually where I think it is. Run .NET build, publish, from publish into app publish. I'm not convinced this thing is working the way I expect. Let's see. So what exactly does this do? .NET build into the directory, publish into app.publish, switches the working dir into app, okay, and then copies from publish into app.publish. Okay. I'm a little confused. I see, and this is where my Docker ignorance is going to start showing a little bit, is I don't understand Docker copy. Someone explain this to me, please. What is from used in my copy command? Yeah. Oh, look. Somebody's clearly got the same thing. This is a multi-stage build. This is used to keep the running Docker container small while being able to build, compile things. Need lots of dependencies. So in the first part, we need to complete the Go environment to install all of our stuff. From builder. Where did they use that? So in their case, they're using it to reference the layer, to copy that out. The problem is this isn't, publish isn't the name. Oh, there it is. Publish is the name of a layer. So from the publish layer, grab the contents of app.publish, put them in the current working directory, which is /app. Ah, okay, there's the incantation. Got it. So this is referencing the layer up here. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's see, verbosity detailed. We're gonna try this. Let's see. Docker build. Oh, it hid the output from me. I wanted to see that output. Let's see. Docker images. I don't want to just blow away all my images so I don't have to think too hard. 12 minutes ago. That doesn't sound right. Okay, so we're going to come up here. Images. I would like to... There a cleanup all unused? Doesn't appear to be. Probably going to end up having to tag this thing, so I'm going to just shut down a bunch of this stuff because I don't want to think too hard. I'm wondering if that other build was before I did it, and my none is actually one of the ones that I care about. I'm probably going to need to tag it to reference it appropriately. I think that dev one was likely the Visual Studio build doing it for me. Like forever. Yep, go away. I don't want to think too hard. Okay. Okay, so Docker build ag GitHub helper. Let's see. Docker images. GHH. It's interesting that it says 13 minutes ago, when I clearly just did that right now. I'm wondering if because it used all the cache stuff, it just knew that that was there. Force it to rerun. That's more like what I expected. Remarkably big. Oh, I know why it's so big. It's because I've got things like the NuGet exe sitting inside of there. Okay, show me Docker images. 8 seconds ago. That seems better. Okay, and then run. So now I want GHH latest. Okay, required command was not provided. Excellent. This is what I expect. You'll note this is now giving me an error as like what I would expect to go through. I don't know if that feeds in. So it turns out you have to spell it correctly, but it does look like did I not just copy that? Contributors. Required command was not provided. Unrecognized command or argument contributors. That's an interesting bit of output. .NET run. So people who may not be familiar with the double hyphen, that's typically on the terminal used to escape the difference between the command that you're running and any additional arguments needed. So .NET run -- help. So effectively this says pass the help option to the running command, not to .NET, which it helpfully does. And then I go contributors. See, and that's what I expect. I expect it to laugh at me and then work. When I do that equivalent. Okay, cd bin debug. Not quite the exact equivalent, but we were doing a .NET GitHub helper DLL, right? We'll pass up to it. That works. And I go, okay. That works as well. So, given the bit up here, I'm guessing what is not happening is in my Docker file, I'm guessing this thing needs to forward args in. And I'm guessing it's not. So let's just look that up. Docker pass arguments. Yeah, pass arguments to entry point. I would like to forward in args. When I do a Docker run, I want to pass something in. How do I do it? Use entry point in its exec form. Entry point. Then when you run Docker, the value will be appended after your entry point. The be part of your command on the command line into entry point, and the tail, which should be configurable into CMD. Then you simply append. So this allows you to change CMD, and then entry point allows you to tack it on. This has an entry point here. So that would seem to strongly imply. Let's try this. Let's try this here. So I'm wondering if the issue is. Ah ha 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 ha. Just the double hyphen. Interesting. Interesting. That, I wonder if that's a system command line bug. Because I'm betting Docker was forwarding the double hyphen in ahead of time, and it wasn't sure what to do with it. And this is what we expect. Access token is required. There is no access token specified. We expect it to blow up. That makes sense. Okay. Cool. So that guy's now running. That makes me happy. This now, we've now at least tested that this thing works well enough. I am not going to paste my access token right here on stream. That sounds like a bad idea. But I do need to take access token, and I am going to need to pass it into my action. We're just going to come over here and just keep adding stuff on. So, because I believe what we saw is GitHub token is the magical thing that will have the access token. And I don't know. I'm actually curious how needed it is. I know OctoKit wants it, but I don't know if that's actually a needed thing. Why does, oh, this thing is what needs it. Client factory. Oh, so this is all me. Access token. Interesting. I wonder if this is actually needed, or if you're making unauth calls. I'm betting this is the necessity of the access token. I think is a Kevin fail, not an OctoKit fail. But we're gonna roll with it for now. Okay, so that's all there. That should work. Let's find out. So, and actually, real quick, I want to try one more thing. I think what I can do, so let's remove the NuGet config. I think I can put the NuGet config back where I want it. Back up at the root where it belongs. Where's this test? It must have been an old project. Okay. And now I should be able to go add existing item, NuGet config at the root, save. We're going to come down here. We're going to go with Docker build. I just want. Oh, I am in way too deep of a directory. I think that's it. lovely game of guess how many ... wax it takes. Just want to make sure that this thing builds clean. It should. It should build clean. There's no reason it shouldn't. Okay, good. And I can actually, I'm thinking about it, let's go fix that too. I no longer need the -v space D is just verbosity detailed, which is show me all the stuffs. Okay, default Azure container tools. Yeah, sure, fine. We'll leave that there for now. I don't see any reason not to. A couple minor changes to the output. Not a big deal. Docker ignore. Not a big deal. Let's see. Action.yaml. Oh, we didn't change the description. Okay, so list all of the contributors to a milestone. Stone. I really cannot type today. Okay, so that looks better. Let's see. That looks better. This is just adding in all of those solution items, which looks fine. This is adding in the NuGet config. Adding container action support. Okay, commit, push. Thank you. Get cracking. You've been wonderful. Okay, so back to where this whole thing started. Let's see. Docker. Oh, this is Docker support. We want this. Create an action, commit, tag, and push your thing to GitHub. So we did do a commit push. We did not do a tag. When an action is in a private repository, my workflow is in any repository. So I think the following workflow code uses the completed hello world action in the public actions hello world actions repository. Copy the following into GitHub workflow main YAML file, but replace the actions with your repository and action name. So this is what we want to do. And I think I can do this all in the same repo. I don't think this needs to be anywhere different. So we need this file here. Boom. So let's go here. So we'll just go code that. Boom. And then we will copy this, paste it. Okay, so on a push, job, show contributors. Runs on Ubuntu latest. Great. Name a job to get contributors. Let's see. Name. Get contribs. Because I'm lazy. ID. Get contribs. So the only reason for this ID is you have to, when you want to reference the outputs from it, you got to give it a name to reference it by. So this is actually going to be get contribs here. I can make that a little bigger for people. Let's see, you collapse, get out of my way. Okay, so this is not going to be that. So we need our, let's see, do you use recordings of your streams for students or for employees where you can see information on the topic under discussion? Yes and no. So personally, yes, I do point people to my streams all the time when I know I've talked about some stuff. Pro tip, and I really should advertise this more. I need to do some work on it. This repository here, if you ever want to search my streams for content, there's this lovely little subtitles folder down here, and you can see like the older stuff I didn't have it named quite as nicely, but the newer stuff I have it dated and put on here. I probably should add better titling to it. These are just the YouTube IDs, but these are just straight up markdown files that I auto-generate from the YouTube subtitles. So when you upload a video, YouTube will generate some automatic subtitles for you. So the text you search in here is what Google heard me say, which may or may not be accurate, but it's usually close enough, at least for finding things. So, and the nice part is all of these lines are hyperlinks to the point in time of the video. So it does mean then you can come up here in the search and end up just searching this repository for the text that I need. So for example, if I want to find Kraken, right? So if I want to find all of the stuff where I've talked about get Kraken, because it normally catches it as, get, G-E-T, Kraken. So, oops. But it does mean that then I have a way of searching all of this. So, and added perk, this is some of the stuff in here is where I would kind of anticipate wanting to actually do some. This is one of the repos where I'm wanting to learn this containerized action, because there's some stuff in here that I would love to build, because the code that it runs to do all of this actually just lives in these other folders. So if you want to see how I generate all the subtitles, all the code's in the repo. There's also some code in. So there's two actions that are inside of here. The generate subtitles is the one that creates all those markdown files. So as you can see, it just pings every day, and it goes looking to see, is there a new video? Is there a new video? And if there is, it goes, ooh, download the subtitle track and generate the markdown, check it into the repo, and do a push. So this thing generally gets a commit auto-magically quite a bit. This other one here is a little more, we'll say, intricate and delicate and highly customized to me. This one will not work in your own fork at all. This one actually, when it sees a new Twitch stream, it will download my Twitch stream, attempt to figure out my countdown timer at the beginning, chop that part off at the end, upload the resulting file to YouTube, and set a whole bunch of metadata for me. So, which is a non-trivial thing to do. And I apologize, that's part of the reason for last week's stream on YouTube, why it appears to just kind of start randomly a little bit, is there's some issue with the silence detection that it's using at the beginning that I need to go and figure out what happened with. I did make a backup copy of the original video, so I do have the correct one to upload at some point, but editing video is something that is boring for me and I hate doing. So I write code to do it for me because I'm lazy. If I get really fancy, I have a pipe dream of being able to add stream markers on Twitch and have that convert into markers on YouTube with the appropriate timestamps offset based upon the trimming that it is. So if I get around to it, that's one of the things I want to update. But if you want to search my videos for particular content, you can certainly do it there. One of the things at some point I'd like to add to it is just the auto description that it puts on my videos. I'd love for it to tack on a link to the appropriate markdown file. That way, if people wanted to search, there is an easier way to search, because YouTube search on videos is kind of limited, and it does okay. But I like being able to have something like that where I can search the way I want. And if at a later point I decided to get even fancier on my searches, I now have the data to do so. Okay. Right, I was updating a... Right, I needed the repo for this. That's what I was after. So I need this. So where theirs is underneath actions, hello world action, blah, mine is going to be there. And then more importantly, mine is going to be at a particular commit. So we're just going to grab the hash, slap that on. And then this width is going to need to line up with the inputs from that. So let's see. I'm going to just, hey, you, go to the side. Thank you. You, go to the side. Thank you. Okay, so I want to grab, this is going to be milestone, and I want this to be a 4.6.0. And then repository, we're going to pick on the material design project. So I can come in here and I know that the repo is named here, right? And then I want to come over here and I want to say repository owner. Boom. And that is under the material design org, which is here. Okay, and then echo, this is, we're just going to call it get the output. No, comments wrong. Echo the contributors are, and then let's not do a colon. I don't know if that's going to mess it up. Steps get contributors output, and the output from that is going to be contributors. And that goes like that. I don't know. Let's see if it works. Let's see. Stage all. Adding workflow for testing. So when I go commit, because the on action is push, that should trigger. Because that's not filtered on branch. That's just straight up on a push, run the workflow. So off to the races. If this works out of the gate, I am going to be shocked. Okay, that's good. That's good. It fails. Let's see. Unrecognized name. Within expression, GitHub token. So I don't know how to specify it there, but what we can do is we can do something like this. Oh boy, and I've got email notifications. Token, description, let's see, use GitHub token. Just do that for now. Required will be true. And then down here, inputs.token, that goes like that. And then this guy here, actually, I'm going to need the commit for this. Making the token on input, commit. I need that commit hash. And then over, oh, I don't have my workflow add existing item, GitHub workflows main. This becomes there, and then updating to latest version. So one thing that people don't always realize is these commit hashes are created at the point you do the git commit, not at the point you do a push. So I do know that that will be the same hash up on the server as local. So it lets me get away with something like that. Okay, so that should have triggered again. It did. That's kind of cool. So it's going to do all the, so it found the Docker file. Huh. This might be pretty easy. I do wonder if there's any sort of caching of these though, because if it has to download these things every time, that's going to be annoying. Download a newer image. Yeah, because if it has to go out and do things like download the SDK image every time, that... Ew. Okay, so it built my image and it ran it. Could not execute because the application was not found or compatible .NET SDK. You intended to execute the application. You intended to execute a .NET command, so it did not find. It did not find the executable at that point. .NET build worked. Run .NET publish. Immediate copy from app publish. Successfully built, successfully tagged. So it built and tagged it. And then it ran this. There's the inputs. So it did a .NET run. I don't know how the name worked. It did use this tag from here. Oh, there, I see. There's the name right there. Working dir. So it sets up a whole bunch of, so the dash E I believe is environment variables. So it sets up a whole bunch of those. Great, that's not exactly shocking. Okay. I am noticing token is blank, so I fully expect it to fail. But this is a failure inside of the run command. So why is this failing? Did we break something here? Let's double check. So let's go back up here. Let's blow away this guy. Let's delete up. Just gonna clean up all of these extra images. Anything not in use can go away. We aren't running anything. That's just a bunch of Kubernetes and Docker desktop VPN, Docker storage provisioner. Great. That's kind of what we expected. Okay, so that should be there. Let's go with it's probably in my history. Docker build. Do it. Because there's very little reason that this should give me different results. That's the beauty of containerization, is you get the same behavior regardless of where you run the container. It's supposed to effectively hide the operating system level stuff away from your application. Okay, so there's that. Okay, and that works there. Okay, so unless the so let's do this, because they just do a Docker run with various stuff in here. Let's try the RM isn't a big deal, but let's try this and just make sure it's not something weird here. Okay, so that okay, so we do have problem one, is I left off the contributors portion from the action run. We do expect that to go there, because if we just do first bit, it doesn't know what it's doing, which I get. That kind of makes sense. Access token, blah, blah. Okay, so that's all there and works, but what is confused why that would be off. Well, let's do a commit with this. Adding in sub command to invocation, because we know without that I can guarantee it's not going to work. And actually, I wonder if I can do. I think I can do this. I think you can target any git ref, which would include branch names. Now, this is a horrible idea, just to be clear. You do not want your actions just arbitrarily pulling off whatever latest on a branch is. That's bad. Okay, that said, that's what we're going to do. Because right now, while testing, I'm just going to be pushing stuff, and I'd kind of like to not think too hard and have to do dual commits every time. Sounds like a bad idea. So let's go back. I fully expect this to fail. We haven't changed anything to address the issue, so I wouldn't expect this to work. But I'm also curious what it's going to do in this build step. Is it going to have cached layers and build really quickly? Kind of hoping it does. That'd be cool. And I guess the other thing is, even if it does have to download, GitHub's runners have a really fat pipe to the rest of the internet. They can download really. Kind of one of the nice bits about it. Okay, so it looks to be doing everything it did before, and then could not execute. What the heck? Why do you not have... Can I download this? Because where do you store this? Yeah. I get it. You're unhappy. Because it builds this. And is this just existing on the Docker host inside the runner? Is that the deal? I wonder if it's just existing inside the runner. So the runner, again, is just the machine that executes your GitHub workflow. But I'm guessing it has a Docker host installed on it. And I'm guessing it's just running a Docker build, Docker run, based upon the commands that it appears to be doing, because it's just doing Docker run. And then this up here was Docker build. It's not overly advanced. Yeah, sending build context to Docker daemon. Great. That's kind of what we were hoping for. And yes, you can target a branch, which is excellent. Should you? No. Can you? Yes. Because like I said, I'm pretty sure everything after the @ as long as it's any Git reference, you can target any Git ref you want. So tag, branch, commit. Could not execute because the application was not found. So it's not finding the application inside of the container when it goes to run it. Why would that be the case? Why would that be the case? This has a whole bunch of stuff. Is this a case where the working directory is just off? I'm wondering if that's the case. Writing the action code. What did they do on theirs? So this is the bash script. Because they just copied that into the container. They don't rely on a working directory. I'm wondering if that's the problem. I have a sinking suspicion that working directory is the problem. What were they talking about? This, yeah, Docker file support. Because there was a issue in here about working directory. It's recommended It's recommended that you do not use the workdir instruction in your Docker file for the action executes. Mount the GitHub workspace directory on top of anything that was at that location in the Docker image and set Git. For more information, yeah, which I'm pretty sure is exactly what we're leveraging. So that means that, yeah, that little bit here is problematic. I think, how bad is that going to be? So how is this expected to work then? Before the action executes, GitHub will mount the GitHub workspace directory on top of anything that was at that location in the Docker image, and set the GitHub workspace as the working directory. So where is... So I think the simple solution is we just don't set working dir, let it go into the root, and then we're good. I think. Or actually, maybe the better solution is we do that. And this becomes /app. We just do that. That's probably better, because if it's going to override the working directory, that's going to be a problem. And then it would mean that we are not actually at /app where our working dir was set locally, which would explain the difference between local and running out on GitHub Actions. That would kind of make sense. See how this goes. Because again, if this works, I have a bunch of actions that I want to theoretically build up, because good. Access token is required is I treat as success because we can see the code running. But okay, let's see. Dropping use of workdir for running action. Okay, there, push, and then should magically run again. Whoop. So back to the top, actions, try it again. Try it again. So if this works, I definitely then go through and start publishing out a whole bunch of tools on top of this. Because GitHub Actions actually has, I believe, the largest marketplace offering. So while that's running, GitHub Action marketplace. This thing here, just in case people haven't seen it, there is a ridiculously large number of actions available to you. So before doing something crazy like this, like building your own action, you might go and look and see if there is something out there already, because there's a lot from pretty much every major thing you could hope for. Oh, boo! Boo, 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 boo. Okay. What happened? Ah ha ha! Huh? It dropped an H. No, it dropped more than an H. That's interesting. Okay. Unrecognized command or argument. Oh, this needs to be arguments. Because, and I'm betting I could reproduce this running locally. Because if I do, because before I was only passing one thing in, but I'm willing to bet if I do this, yep, unrecognized command or arguments. So, how do you have to specify these individually? How does this work? Do I just need to drop the quotes? Is that the kicker? Is you just drop the quotes and call it a day? Ha! Okay, so the issue is that got quoted in the .NET run command. Which means then over in my YAML here, what this actually needs to be is more like this, which I can get on board with. Okay. Okay, so I think that for passing multiple args works. Let's try this. Let's see, multiple args as YAML array. YAML's wonderful. Do not like YAML. I use it all the time. It's incredibly useful for a great many things. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Okay, let's close some of these tabs down because I don't think we need all of these anymore. Need you, don't need you. Yeah, it is mildly disappointing that it does execute this build every time. I do wonder if there might be an advantage. I don't know. Because you have to compare this against the alternative of if I just post it as a, like, say, a .NET global tool, it still has to, your workflow action still has to pull down and have the .NET SDK installed, or the runtime at least installed. Or no, you do it. I think you need the SDK to install the global tools. So it would have to be a download and install the SDK, and then launch it. But I believe the default software for the GitHub runners has some versions of the SDK already installed. Okay, so this was a little better. So access to, so it squawked at that. Unrecognized. Oh, so it wants me to break up each of these. Oh, okay. So we're going to drop access token for now because it's just causing me problems. And I think what it wants is this, because it's going to individually handle the quoting of individual items. Okay. Let's see. Separating option and argument. Boom. Boom. And that, I think, will at least get it back to feature parity, and then the question will be the proper way to get that token, or just fix the token so it's not needed, which that might end up being the path of least resistance, because I don't think So where is this credential store used? It's passed in here for the connection. Credential store, does it act? Does the in-memory? Is this a Kevinism again? No, this is an OctoKit. Does it actually need credentials? I might have to look this up because I don't think. Let's go while we're letting that. Okay. Failed again. Good, but did it fail? Did it fail with the appropriate error? Yes. Access token is required. Excellent. 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 That is okay. We have it working. Okay. Now we just need the access token to play nice with the other children. Which maybe we choose. So in the interest of while playing with that, I think what we do is we come over here and we just do this. Access token. Inputs.token. I think we just do that and call that good. Okay. And let me just make sure because we weren't getting anything to come through it. Oh. It's because I didn't specify anything. That's probably part of the problem. Something like that. And there's a way to mark an input. I should probably do this too. GitHub Actions inputs secret. There's a way to flag it as a. There's a way to flag inputs as secrets. This is adding secrets. That's not what I want. I want marking. There's an attributor similar that. No, this is landing me in the wrong place. GitHub Actions. Let's drop the word secret. Just show me inputs. It'll be in the inputs. Input types for manual flows. GitHub Action docs. What I'm looking for. For syntax, it's probably here. Input. What we'll call input type. Boolean number string. There's a way to mark these things. Is it just supposed to come in as a secret instead? That might be the kicker. Secrets. Workflow call. Yeah, I think I have a suspicion, even without finding the exact docs, that this is actually going to be secrets, right? And then that goes like that. I have a suspicion that that is how that's going to play out. It's going to be like that. Property secrets is not allowed. Let's go back. GitHub Actions. Action secrets. Dark container. Why is this Ask secrets to Docker GitHub Action. Yeah, there. That's what I would like. File answers. I made my code cleaner. Let's see. So what did you end up doing? So you referenced the secret there. That's a little different. About custom actions, types of actions, composite, steps, uses. Yeah, one of these things in here talks about. Okay, I'm pretty sure the answer is this, despite what Visual Studio is telling me. I think it's wrong. We're gonna push it and see what happens. Oh, but that does mean then that over here, I don't remember how to specify the secret. Oh, where's a sample? GitHub Actions, S secrets to steps. Steps run with. Is it really not that? And it's just, maybe I'm overly complicating this. Okay, backing up. We're gonna leave it like that. I'm back over to here, and we're gonna try the stupid option of literally just do that. Okay. Because it might be that simple. Hopefully this doesn't just go and pop out a token right on the command. Okay, that should, yeah. We'll give that a shot and see what happens. That failed really quick. Unrecognized name value secrets located. Oh. Yep, that'll do it. Let's see. Fixing context name. Boom, boom. For anybody who's ever done much pipelining work, this is more or less the way that it goes. You start off, there's a line of red. It's just all bad. It's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. And you have a string of commits of trying to fix YAML or fixing syntax typo. That's common. A lot more common than I will admit. And then eventually, this little red circle turns into a green check, and there's all the rejoicing. Right after you verify that it went to a green check appropriately, because sometimes you get the green check and it's like, oh, it went to a green check because I commented out all of the bad. And then you have to put it back. Yeah, this is the only part I'm not overly fond of, is this is like, 38 seconds. Yeah. So if I'm gonna do a custom action with the C# stuff and building this image, the image needs to be built faster than that. But like I said, I do wonder if there will be, in this case it can't cache because I'm pointed at the branch and it's gonna have to rebuild. But I will be curious to see how fast that can go. Oh, booyah! Booyah! See, this is the rejoicing part of the pipeline. So for starters, that worked. And then if we look over here, so the only disappointing part is it didn't handle the multi-line, because clearly there's more lines here. And so it only set the output for the one line. Okay, so now the question is, how do you do multi-line output? Because that didn't quite work. Because if you recall down here, all we ended up doing was a string builder. And so when we set the output, this thing only has, catch it. Oh, nice. This thing only has this little bit. Okay, so I want to know, and I could just like line by line do that set output bit, but I don't know if that's how it's expected to work is the only thing. GitHub Action set output. Because it's workflow commands for GitHub Actions. That's the docs page I want. Setting output parameter. Optionally, you can declare out parameters in. This is great, but how do you get multiple lines of output? That's set output multiple lines. I'll put multi-line strings in GitHub Actions. Why, that's exactly what I'd like to do. And to consume the data, blah, blah, blah. This works as expected. Multi-line output failed attempt. Ahaha. Be transferred, which is very likely the undesired behavior. That is 100% correct. That is undesired and not what I want. Only works on single line input. Well, string substitution. Ugh. Option 2, environment variable. Ugh. I mean, pushing the raw data to the GIT. Ugh. Really? Really? Oh, come on. Let's look. This is a community one. I got the response from the team. Can be escaped like below the unescapable. Oh. Got it. So it has to be flattened to a single line. Can be escaped by below. The runner will unescape in reverse. Ha. Okay, so what is the incantation? So I believe 25 is -n, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, 25 is %. So this is doing a straight up replacement of replace % with %25, replace n with 0a, and replace r with %0d. Got it. Okay, so let's. Okay, so we can do this. I think eventually I just replace the way the string builder is building it up to not append the new lines. But let's let's see. You don't have a replace built on. Oh, you do. Okay, so let's see. So we will do \n replace with, and then for n it was 0a. Okay, and then we're going to do r and % accordingly. So % is going to be 25. Oh, and that one actually needs to go first. We're about to add a bunch of % symbols in. I guess those ones don't really matter. and then 0D for the R. Okay, so let's see. Attempted escaping of output. See, this does feel like something that I would love to solve with system command line, such that rather than doing this type of thing, I would love to be able to have it automatically append some of this. And I may end up just writing my own extension method to do this little bit anyway. That way I can do something like write GitHub output, name value, and have the value automatically do this substitution for me. I think something like that is probably what I'll do, because that sounds pretty cool. Okay. Build me an image. I do wish, sometimes, this is one of the weird things with GitHub Actions, just in the UI, is you can tell there's more lines of output here because it started on line 67. They'll all be present when this thing finishes, but sometimes the intermediate bit in the middle. Okay, so getting contributors. So it did print out my, my standard out, which is good. You would expect anything that you write to standard out to go there. But then I would expect it to not show the output variable, and then this output here then gets it, which would, oh, it worked. It worked. The contributors are, and so I can probably, we can drop that out of the sample, because that was coming from this guy. We'll just drop that. Clean up output. Boom. Boom. Now we're talking. Now we are talking. Sweet. Sweet. This makes me happy. This makes me very happy. Because like I said, I think that other repository with like my subtitle stuff, I may end up pulling out at some point. I think what I want to do is pull out my tools out of the repository and have it just be the markdown files, maybe with a little GitHub page for search and display and that kind of thing, so it looks prettier. But then still have the actions run on that repo, but the code for the actions then gets moved into, Kevin's special video editing repo, and we build up an action that way, which is pretty slick. Pretty slick. There is one thing to note about these GitHub Actions. Because you have to put that action.yaml at the root of the repository, you can't have, it's one repo per action. So if you want another one, make another repo. Technically, I suppose what you could do is you could have a single action, but have multiple parameters that put you down different code paths. But that, if they aren't related, separate them into different repos. For related stuff, it's probably fine to have switches for on and off and that kind of thing. Of, in this case, I'm going to get the contributors, and in this case, I'm going to do the other ones. Because right now, this little CLI tool is pretty much been my dumping ground for, hey, I need a GitHub thingy. And so I just kind of like, you'll note, it will pull me back contributors. It will figure out how many projects have been created since a given time span, so that I can go and parse how many CS proj files were added to a repo since a date. That's not a function I think most people need. Very rarely do I think anyone needs this, but I needed it, so I wrote it. I could go through and figure out how many projects have been created. Oh, I'm sorry. This is projects created. Those ones go together. It does. This thing is also used to do with the diff on the icons. So here, something else I think a lot of people often miss. So on the material design wiki, there's this icons update. Again, I don't know how many people look at this. Where is... that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the, pack icon changes. There we go. There's this bit here. So you can actually go and see the pack icon changes at every version. So it will tell you which icons are new. It will tell you, this one was big. It'll tell you which icons had a visual change to them. So the name still exists, but there was some tweak to the data, the path data for it. Which icons were removed and whatnot. So all of these exist, and so you can dive in. So the only reason I started generating these is because I would get bug reports coming in saying, oh, such and such an icon no longer exists. And it's like, yeah, I know. The problem is we're auto-genning this pack icons collection. And it's really difficult to auto-gen and then not have breaking changes. So I just threw in the towel and said, you know what? Every release, the pack icon enum could have breaking changes, and I'm just going to document what they are. Because it's the alternative would be to not always take the updates from the material design icons. And it's like, no, I'd rather have latest stuff. So, yes, that is so gorgeous. I am so happy. I am so happy. I'm going to be making more GitHub Actions. This is going to be great. I am noticing I do have a stray new line on the end here as well. So there probably needs to end up being a trim or similar on the back side of this. But at least in terms of doing a containerized action, I will say this, surprisingly easy. If you have containerizing the app, I think was the hardest part of the whole thing. But once you have your stuff in a container, slapping that inside of a GitHub action is pretty easy, with the understanding that you need to not use workdir, which is problematic with the auto-generated Docker file from Visual Studio. So if you use the auto-generated one from Visual Studio, understand that you don't want to use workdir and you want to, fully qualify your paths with /app or whatever. And then everybody's happy. You can use workdir up here on your other layers, but not on your last one. So automatic gratitude doesn't devalue gratitude. Not completely. So sweet. Well, so for anybody who's interested, I will once again throw this guy back. I will throw this repo back up if anybody's interested in taking a look at it. Like I said, I will probably do some more work on it, clean it up. Technically, this action is live if anybody wanted to reference it in your projects. I don't think I would recommend it, but you slap something like this into your repository where you feed it a milestone, a repo, and an owner. And as long as the token you pass in has access to that, you're golden. You're off to the races. So if it is a private repository, you are going to need to make sure that either the generated token has permission or you generate a pat or something. Because this thing doesn't auto-magically gain access to private stuff unless you grant it somehow. But containerized actions, they work. They're pretty cool. You can write them in C#. So, sweet. With that, I think I'm going to call it for the night. Thank you, everyone, for coming in and hanging out. Appreciate those people who subscribed. Hopefully people found this interesting. Like I said, this was something I was hoping to somewhat learn for myself because I was interested in understanding basically the flow of doing this. Since I took a test on it, I should probably know it a little better than just theoretical. It's nice to have some practical examples of actually getting hands-on with it. So I will say happy coding. See everyone next week. Have a good night.